On with Katerina.
And we're live, which is more than I can say for a lot of people. Um, it is Thursday, the 18th of September, the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m., and maybe today will be the day that we hit 40 live viewers because of the overwhelming rash of interest sweeping the nation in Belarusian affairs. We are hopeful that today is the day. Look, folks, it is 8 o'clock a.m., and Mrs. Cactus is very excited about the day. She's whipped out her saxophone. I've put on a very cool line drawing dog shirt. And why are we all so excited today? Look, the whole Cactus chorus has shown up. You can see the snowman's glistening forehead. And why are we all so excited? Um, it is because uh, the sun is out again. And it has been a number of days since I've been able to say that the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of this monologue, I'm going to get to say it. And that is why things are so peachy that we're going to make even the situation in Belarus look cheerful and exciting and fun. And for that purpose, we have everybody's favorite convicted insurrectionist who was not pardoned, by the way. Her crimes, unlike all those chicken shit January 6th insurrectionists, Katya's crimes were not pardoned by the president when he came into office. So she's really the one true insurrectionist of the bunch. She's unrepentant. She's standing strong. And she's really trying not to burst out laughing right now because I am being obnoxious. Um, Folks, I have a few things to say before we get into things. The first is um, we got to get to 40. 40 is the new goal. 40 is the new 30. We were pushing 30 for a while, and then we got there, we broke through, and we went right up to 38. But we've never crossed 40, except yesterday when Nick opened a whole lot of windows. And I can see when people open new windows in Riverside. I have godlike surveillance powers. I can not only see that it's happening, I can see who's doing it, Nick. So don't try to juice my numbers. Cash Patel can go up to Congress and juice the crime numbers all he wants. But we do honest accounting here on Dogshirt TV. And if I tell you there are 22 people logged in right now, that means there are 22 and not 18 with Nick having four windows open. Um, every now and then we have somebody who's logged in on two devices, and I don't bother to police that. But if you're juicing my numbers, I'm going to call you out on it, Nick. Um, we need to get to 40. So it's important that you tell your friends, your family members, the random people you meet on the street that they should tune in live to Dogshirt TV, that the experience is different from watching it on YouTube later. And why is the experience different? Number one, because you have the Greek chorus, you have each other, and everybody else scratches their little heads and wonders what the fuck I'm talking about when I say the Greek chorus said or someone said in the Greek chorus. But you know the answer to that. So that's difference number one. Difference number two is that you guys know what happened on Dog Shirt TV as it happens. And everybody else has to wait until 5 o'clock p.m. And there are people who are really like like scratching their faces with anxiety, spending their whole days worried about what's going to happen on what happened already on Dog Shirt TV that they don't
That
know.
happened. That's what was bothering me when you recorded a podcast with Mina and I missed it. That was
Exactly.
I was looking up YouTube, but it was not uploaded yet.
Yeah, so we recorded, think about that. We recorded at 8 o'clock. Katya came up organically in the conversation. The situation in Belarus came up organically. I texted her middle of the show, "Hey, come join us. We're talking about Belarus." She didn't notice it because let's face it, this is an unladylike hour to have a show. And she didn't get, and she spent the whole day it's like with mosquitoes under your clothes or something, just scratching and uncomfortable, um, waiting for 5 o'clock. And you don't have to do that. And so, tell your friends, also, if you just think about sometimes we break news on Dog Shirt TV. For example, yesterday, we revealed that I was not responsible for the Windsor Castle operation, much to my chagrin. Somebody else pulled that off. That was the Led by Donkeys people. And if you were not on the show live, you had to wait until I posted yesterday's Dog Shirt Daily, which, Holly didn't have to wait for, and Mike Feinberg didn't have to wait for. So, I'm just saying there are advantages. And so your job is to convince friends, family, random strangers, assholes you want to inflict this on, to subscribe, send me money, and I will spend that money on projectors, chalk.
I'm like a televangelist right now.
Yeah, I'm promising you, I am going to spend. No, but they don't tell
They
you
have
what
projectors. They have
they don't
lots of
tell you what they
equipment.
spend it on though.
Well, they have a
They
lot of
spend it on
equipment.
luxury items. I don't do luxury items. I'm going to spend it on equipment to annoy bad people. That's it. That's
That's
what I
what
spend
they
money
say
on.
they do. The annoy bad people. Satan, like Satan. Satan is annoyed when they have yachts, when preachers of the gospel have yachts. I'm just saying there's similarities. Okay.
All right, like I'm not going to buy a yacht. I'm going to buy a projector and lots of gobos. And I'm going to buy implements of annoying people. And that's what I spend money on these days. Folks, the sun is shining. The birds are chirping. It is going to be a great freaking day.
Oh.
And 3, 2, 1. You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a bleeding revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that sometimes I text Katya in the middle of the show, "Hey, we seem to be talking about Belarus. You should show up." And she, it being an unladylike hour, does not receive the text until later. And so she sends me a note to the effect of, "Oof, I wish I'd seen that." And I say, "Don't worry about it. Come on Thursday instead." And Katya, being a super organized person, which I am not, sends me a bullet pointed list of things that she wants to talk about, which we are going to go through in a very organized way. And so we have an organized show today, which is not usually what we have. And that's one of the revolutionary features. And another one of the revolutionary features is then when she shows up, I read the stage directions and tell you that she sent an organized list of things to talk about. And so, I kind of out myself as disorganized, and I out her as a little bit neurotically organized, maybe. And and Holly just kind of stares on in Oh, was that a good thing for Ben to do to out the guest as neurotically organized? And the answer is no, it was not a good thing, but I did it anyway because I'm a bad person, and all of which is a long-winded way of saying that we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have Katerina Shmatsina, aka Katie, aka what else do we call you? The insurrectionist. That's her her World Wrestling Federation cage match name. She's Katie the Insurrectionist Schmatzina. Um, there we
Good
go.
morning. Good
That's your
morning,
introduction.
Ben,
Good morning.
Holly, and everyone, and I'm happy to be here.
She says cheerfully. Um, thinking inside, what did I do to deserve this? So, let's start with Belarusian Russian military exercises, which just wrapped up, and there were U.S. military observers. And so I want to start with that. What the heck are U.S. military observers doing at Belarusian Russian military exercises?
So, this were some Pentagon folks. I did not look up their names, but it did pop up in New York Times article and a bunch of other outlets. And they were, perceived as surprised guests, like a wow factor. Like usually during military drills, there are international observers invited. There were not surprising guests at Belarusian Russian drills, such as folks from Cuba and whatnot. But Americans, yeah, that was kind of something new. What I find interesting is that they refused talking to New York Times correspondent who was in Belarus at that time. And I wonder if there was a correspondent from Fox News, if their reaction would have been different. That I don't know. But
And
yes,
yesterday was International Fox Day, by the way, which I meant to mention, but as far as I know, following Matt Tate's admonition that there aren't enough Foxes on Fox News, or coverage of news that would be of interest to Foxes, there was no coverage of Fox News on Fox News, that at least not that I'm aware of International Fox Day.
yeah, but like overall, this is not surprising. I sure we will talk about this later about the rapprochement of Washington and Minsk, which is happening over the course of a couple months.
Um, all right, so we don't really know anything about the US presence here.
No, like I would assume that they were just observing the course of the drills. I would assume that what was drawing most of their interest would be the nukes that are staged in Belarus, such as tactical nukes and Oreshnik, as if like this is like the newest addition to the Belarusian sort of military scene is the Russian tactical nukes, and also like Oreshnik as an intermediate range missiles. And that's a whole different topic of how Russians are and like spreading their influence not only by like building some military bases in Belarus or military training centers, however you would call it, still serves the same purpose. And all of this is pointed at NATO because who else they would see as an adversary. But yeah.
Don't question. But I don't know a whole lot about military drills, but it seems to me if you're drilling your military, one thing you generally don't want to have is adversary powers watching so that they understand your tactics and really understand your capabilities. From a Belarusian or much less a Russian perspective, what is the value of having even friendly Trump administration DoD people there? Is it that you want to show off your capability to intimidate them? Is it that you don't regard the United States as an adversary power? Is
Mhm.
it for show? What's their objective in it?
So that is sort of a common practice, at least in Belarus, to invite foreign observers. But I would point out that the previous drills that were taking place right before full-scale invasion, and by the way, Russians were attacking Ukraine also via Belarusian territory, and there was a bunch of Russian like army soldiers who arrived to Belarus for the army exercises, and then they never left. There were observers from, let's say, NATO, from European Union, and then, despite all the like, oh, we're sharing information, we have nothing to hide, the full-scale invasion still happened. So I don't know the logistics, but it doesn't prevent bad things from happening.
I'm not a military analyst, but my impression is military exercises are always about posturing.
Yeah.
I mean, of various kinds. It's messaging and signaling and trying to influence, and you know, that's my impression. I mean, I guess some of them are actually for practicing or preparing contingencies, but my impression is it's always, even on our side, like it's a lot of posturing.
Yeah, but there are drills that are done to see if you can, experimental purposes for training, see if you can do things. Uh, you know, they're not like demonstrations that you can do them. Um, all right, so let's talk about the issue, first of all, that caused us to text you in the middle of the show, which is the fact that the um, drones that went into Poland came from Belarus, and spent a long time flying over Belarus before they got to Poland. And let's leave aside the military aspects of this. I'm curious about the political aspects of it. Lukashenko has been trying, as you described, to have a kind of a rapprochement uh, with the White House, with um, various, um, uh, uh, he's once again in that I can talk to Putin, I can talk to the West posture, which he sometimes puts himself in, which would work better if he spoke any other language, but whatevs. Um, uh, but uh, it seems like having Russian attacks on NATO from your territory is not a great way to play that role. How do you understand what happened in Poland vis-a-vis Belarus the other day?
So I would say that the rapprochement with Washington is separate from Belarus relations or Belarus regime's relations with Europe. Europe is not shaking hands with Lukashenko. They're not talking about revoking any sanctions. Also, due to the fact, I would say, because they see Belarus for what it is, for a threat in the region, like immediate threat to its security, and the drones sort of fit nicely in this picture. Washington track is a different thing. We would uh, like so in terms of Trump talking to Lukashenko on the phone, which kind of happened a couple of times since like a very friendly tone. I think it well, Lukashenko is a talented politician. You should give him credit for that. And he managed to sell himself as someone who knows Putin for a long time, probably better than many other presidents, in decades. I think it's noteworthy that like hours before the Alaska summit, Trump had a phone call with Lukashenko. And Minsk has been serving as a back channel communication between Washington and Moscow, also sort of conveying messages from Putin. What is it Putin wants? And the U.S. administration seemed open to listening to these messages and trying to understand Putin better. And for that, Lukashenko seems to be having like a prospect of lifting some sanctions. Some of them have been like a little bit lifted that concerns of Belarusian Belavia, like the airplane, like the airlines, state-owned airlines company. We'll see what happens next. And somewhere on the sidelines of it, also there is a humanitarian track going on, which is great, for Belarusian political dissidents. Some of, I would say, like roughly maybe 60, 70 prisoners have been released over the course of a couple of months, but there are, over 1,000 more remaining in jail, more being arrested. So,
Yeah,
in
we'll
the
get
grand
to the
scale, yeah,
humanitarian
right.
track in a moment. So, okay, but none of that explains in the middle of that if you're trying to ingratiate yourself with Trump, putting him in the position where he has to tweet out, "Here we go." Um, Probably not the
What does
greatest.
it mean, though? Like, I'm
Nobody
trying to
knows.
read into this.
Yeah,
I'm not a native speaker, like
I'm
native
not,
English.
well, I'm not a native speaker of Trump either. And query whether anybody else in the policy community really is. I, but I'm like, it clearly doesn't put the US in a good position to have NATO frictions amplified like that. So, what is in this? Is this just like Lukashenko's reached the end of his leash and Putin said, Russian military needs like crashing drones into Poland are non-negotiable? Or is there something else going on here?
Oh, I love this expression about the reaching the end of the leash. I would say that's pretty much what it is. I don't see
I,
much.
I, I have lots of other good metaphors for that. If you want, we can go. We can play with them over the course of the show.
Great. I will, write them down. Neurotically write them down for future reference. But yes, I do not see much discretion for Lukashenko to do something in within the foreign policy choices that would be contradicting whatever is that Putin wants. And by the way, Poland closed the borders, including the passengers like routes with Belarus, because they were anticipating some sort of provocations on the border. And hey, here's the provocation coming, out of plain air. Who would have expected that?
So the border closing was before the incident.
Yes, they were anticipating the provocations. Yes, because of the drills.
And and we know these were Russian forces launching drones from Belarus. What is the Russian military presence in Belarus like? I know that they invaded, the northern part of the invasion of the full scale invasion launched from Belarus, and so there was definitely, transiting from Belarus. But what's the permanent Russian presence in Belarus like?
I would have hard times like um yeah, I would have like hard time assessing that because there's not much access to like reliable information. Also due to the fact like when there are some maybe activists or insider sources when they try to make photos of the Russian military equipment they would spot like those people would go into prison. So but I have not seen reports of some like permanently stationed troops. What we know though is that Belarusian infrastructure is servicing Russian, like we are repairing their like equipment, military equipment, producing microchips for their military needs, and treating Russian soldiers who are wounded, in the full over the course of full scale invasion to Ukraine.
But we don't know whether, I mean, it has been reported that those drones took off from Belarus. It
Mhm.
weren't merely transiting Belarusian airspace, because, of course, other than the Kaliningrad oblast, the Russians actually don't have a border with Poland. And these drones at a minimum, flew for a few hours over Belarus, but I think they were reported to have come from Belarus. We don't know anything about what kind of drone operations the Russians are running from Belarus right now, do we?
No, but we know that there are some military training centers. You would not even call this like a military base, but like it does not really change the substance of what is it like Russian presence in Belarus. We also know that because we're now staging Russian tactical nukes, there are like Russian experts and like officers who are training Belarusian side how to properly sort of store them. Like Belarusians are not supposed to have like access code and whatnot, but they're supposed to be trained how to use the infrastructure. So there is some sort of like Russian military presence. It's just hard to assess. It does not seem to be numerous at this point.
Good. There's a question in the chat that I thought was good. Does Lukashenko have any sort of autonomy in terms of Belarusian national security, or is Belarus pretty much 100% a client state of Russia at this
I
point?
mean, he can be autonomous as much as he wants till this within the restriction that it does not contradict Russian security interests.
So basically, if he thinks something Russia wants Belarus to do, or something Russia is doing in Belarus militarily, and he thinks that that is not in keeping with Belarusian national security, he can't really say no, or he's not likely to say no.
I would say he does not the capacity to say no, and it goes back to 2020 mass protests in Belarus, where Lukashenko was this close to, losing power because there were like defections inside the system, on top of the most massive protest in Belarus news history. And if it was not for Moscow, he would have already stepped down.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like the Moscow support came with a blank check, as a payoff, and we can see how like also Belarus participation in the full scale, like being a co-aggressor in the Ukraine war is something that definitely does not serve any of Lukashenko's interests. But here we are.
And what do we know about the relationship between Putin and Lukashenko? They, uh, Putin reportedly has contempt for Lukashenko and kind of dislikes him and thinks
Mhm.
he's a little bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I can't tell if that's right or if it's, just what Putin, who likes to present himself as very urbane and sophisticated, puts out about somebody who's clearly, just a thug, whereas Putin is a thug with pretensions. What do we know anything about their actual relationship?
I came across some like insider commentaries or observations that it is like like a relationship of a convenience, and like there were a bunch of sort of diminishing nicknames that Putin would call Lukashenko behind the closed doors, or I mean like when behind his back essentially. um but I think, well, having a puppet who happens to be still like a sovereign state, that is super convenient, as in this like drones operation, or the fact that again you can place nukes in Belarus. This would not count as nuclear proliferation because still technically operated by Russians, and Belarusians just are
Right, it's
out
no
there.
different. It's
Oh
no
yeah.
different from U.S. nukes in Germany
Yeah,
as
so
as
that's
an
that's wildly
international law matter.
convenient, to have this puppet.
So, does Putin have this relationship with anybody else? I mean, is there any other country um, among, the Central Asian republics, for example? We don't talk about Turkmenistan much, but it's as weird as we or weirder than Belarus.
With the massive gold statue of the guy.
Yes.
What's his face? I forget his name.
The Turkmen Bashi, may he
Yeah.
rest in peace. Um, uh, I mean, what is the constellation of Lukashenko-like figures out there looking like these days. He seems unusual to me.
Like unusual how the Lukashenko's
Well,
behavior.
in being a sovereign but pure client of Putin's. It seems like even the Central Asian dictators have diversified a little bit in their um, clientelism. They have relations with China. They do business with the United States. There's something about Lukashenko being sort of like a pure all but an SSR, but with notional sovereignty that strikes me as I don't know. I haven't checked in on Turkmenistan recently, but what is how unusual is the Russia Belarus relationship?
For most of my life, I've only seen one guy, being president. So it's seems less unusual to me. It is unusual to me to know that people show up at a polling station and make like their votes are being counted. So I would say like Lukashenko. So on one hand, though, I would say like Belarus is a gateway to NATO/Europe. So it does have more strategic significance for Moscow, and they just cannot let us go. Like also looking at the Ukraine and like Maidan scenarios, that was part of the reason why Russians are watching closely, trying to meddle into Belarusian affairs, and to keep us under control. Um, I would say for Lukashenko and his family, what seems most important, they recognize that dependence on Moscow is like something unavoidable at this point. They care about their own well-being and them staying in power and not being held accountable for the crimes, including crimes against humanity and forced disappearances and like other things. So, like Lukashenko does not have a nice way out, unless he would hide, which he's been doing. Like from what we know from investigative reports, him hiding money in Saudi and like some other places like in Middle East. But he does not have many options, again, like how to exit the presidential burden of being president. And by the way, I wrote a piece in and the Atlantic Council recently, like sort of talking about scenarios, what could happen after Lukashenko. And the conclusion that I have when I ponder on this, whatever happens, either it's like an attempt of democratic change or someone steps in, like one of Lukashenko's sons or whoever within nomenclatura, they have to figure out how to deal with Moscow, because at this point it doesn't look like there is any other autonomous decision have been made without approval from Moscow in terms of like change of leadership.
So, what else do we know about these drills? You mentioned that their purpose has to do with these tactical nukes. So, what is the message that they are trying to send with them, and what do we know about what they were really about?
So, of course, the nukes are pointed at NATO. And I don't see a scenario where NATO would be eager to attack poor little Belarus. I find it interesting, the rhetoric of Lukashenko. He asked Putin to stage Oreshnik missiles in Belarus because he felt so threatened. As if everyone was so eager to attack him. And like this is just to. It's not that Russia would say like, oh, we're expanding our influence and using Belarus as a buffer zone. I'm kind of surprised I don't see much reaction from current U.S. administration as to all this nuclear posturing that Russia is doing in Belarus. There was some sort of pushback or some notes of concern coming from Biden administration. And by the way, Belarusian, not Belarusians, but like Belarusian leadership, current leadership, have even like staged a referendum to remove the neutrality clause in the constitution and to allow essentially to stage nukes in Belarus. And then I'm not a nuclear, expert, but I came across opinions that there's no such thing as tactical nukes. All of this could still do pretty like a lot of damage if pointed at the right targets in Europe. What we know on the technical side, what is it that we're testing this time? It was more of the process of making a decision whether to deploy those. Not that we're not exploding anything, thanks God. Also, Belarusian territory is small, and I would be concerned about the environmental damage and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, Russians have done a lot of kooky things, but above ground nuclear tests in the last uh, 40 years, 50 years is not one of them. Um, all right, so what do you take from all of this? You have closer military integration with Moscow, presumably not entirely voluntary. You have that going on at the same time as there is a cultivation of the White House, but not Europe. Uh, Somehow, as somebody who still believes in the Russia collusion hoax, this does not surprise me. And what do you make of the courtship of the Trump administration? I mean, they had another visit from another
Hmm.
envoy
Yeah.
uh, bearing cufflinks, right?
Oh yeah, I actually have pictures of that. Let me see if I can share my screen. Uh, ugh,
If you
okay.
can't, just text me the pictures and I can
Okay.
display them.
Am I sharing now?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. So that's okay.
But I'm
So
only seeing oh, yeah,
yeah.
wait a minute.
So can you say it now?
Well, we're seeing your screen, but not the part of your screen that you're trying to share.
Okay.
Um,
Then I think I'm just
so
gonna text you the because I don't know what's going on there.
okay, if you just text me the pictures, I will display them.
Okay. Do I text them like on the phone or like in the chat?
Yeah, yeah. Phone is fine.
God, why is it so difficult?
Um,
So cufflinks? He gave him cufflinks?
Oh yeah, so the envoy traveled to Minsk, and there were some more prisoners released. Political prisoners. And yeah. So what?
Is this Witkoff? Is this the same envoy that's in charge
No,
of
this time it
everything?
was like Cole, John Cole. Was
and what
there?
do we know about this envoy?
Yeah. What do we?
Like, is he a Witkoff type? Is he a tech bro? Is he? I've become very interested in who Trump envoys are ever since Adam Bowler uh, got um, you know got Khatib Hezbollah to release Elizabeth Surkov. Um, so I'm kind of curious about these people. Who are we sending to Belarus, and what do we know about him?
That I don't know.
All right, don't worry about the
Okay.
picture.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
describe it.
The like what the envoy brought to Lukashenko was a letter, like a happy birthday letter from President Trump to President Lukashenko.
Did it have a
Say,
naked girl with sorry, that's a crude
yeah,
Epstein
I'm not
joke.
supposed to comment on that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. You
but yeah, it said something nice, like
Surprised if there are Russian and Belarusian oligarchs on the in the client list. That's that wouldn't be shocking to me, but
Anyway, you were saying, what did he
Yeah,
bring?
like nice birthday wishes from Melania and President Trump, and wishing all the best. And by the way, Trump called Lukashenko a highly respectable leader, which, this is also the guy who's committing crimes against humanity and
Well, it
whatnot.
takes
But
one to know one, like it's there, it's all there in his world, I guess he could be.
yeah,
So,
and
and
as
there
a
were
nice
cufflinks?
touch, yes, and as a nice touch, like a little present, was like were cufflinks with the White House emblem on it, which allegedly, like, you could buy them in the White House souvenir shop. Um,
Yeah, that you can. I think the CIA gift shop has cufflinks, if I'm not
oh yeah.
mistaken. So yeah,
But you
generic for
know what?
everything.
If I was there and I knew that there's also some issue of like releasing political. If I was negotiating with the bad guy and I knew that there is also the notion of releasing some political prisoners, I would also bring him some gifts. Why
Yeah,
not?
cufflinks,
Yeah,
Henry the Fourth said Paris is worth a mass, and 60 political prisoners seem worth some cufflinks. What do we know about the prisoners that, and this is now, I think, the second time that we've
Americans are, yeah,
sent somebody
negotiating.
to Minsk, and Lukashenko has responded by freeing political prisoners.
Yeah.
This is an issue close to your heart, obviously, because there, but for the grace of God and the asylum process, go you. Um, what do we know about the 60 people released?
There were, I think, like 54, 56. It's difficult to keep track because there were some more release and then some more arrests. So, in the grand scheme of things.
Right,
Um,
the cosmic
Hard to
scales
keep track
balance
of
out.
political prisoners, when you're constantly arresting people. It's
yeah.
it's just very hard to keep track.
Yeah. And again, like there's over 1,000 still behind the bars. So what we know is first Lukashenko, if he agrees to release them, he says that they should be sent in exile immediately. So they're just transported directly from jail to the Lithuanian border, where usually an American delegation would greet them and say like, "Hey guys, you're free," and everyone would cry and hug their relatives. But they are also, being exiled without documents. Usually their passports taken away. There is a question, like some prisoners were really upset because they thought, okay, if I serve till the end of my sentence, I could be once again like just a regular member of the society in Belarus. I would get my social benefits, like as a retired person, for example, like with the savings for their retirement, or they would have their homes. If they're exiled, they might not be able to sell their properties in Belarus because there is no new laws that are aimed at political dissidents. There was one guy who refused to leave, and he's like a high level um, uh, like political opponent of Lukashenko, high profile guy, Nikolai Statkevich. He used to be a military, he used to be an officer higher up in the military, turned against the regime, and he spent a bunch of years, like a lot of times in prison. And he was brought to the neutral zone, and he refused between Lithuania and Belarus, and he refused to leave. And he walked back. His whereabouts are unknown. There is high chance, he's nowhere to be found. So likely he's back to prison. And then Lukashenko said, like, of course he's our guy. Like we could not have been, like we should have. Of course, it's a humane way to take him back because he's our guy and he didn't want to leave. Like humane way to put him back in jail. I would say that like this whole notion of the like U.S. administration negotiating with Lukashenko, like how to alleviate the sufferings of political prisoners, like it's a very righteous thing. I do not see the full picture. I would not be super charmed and say like, oh yay, this is great. It is great on the humanitarian aspect of this
It's
particular
great on the
people.
individual, like it's great
Yes,
anytime a prisoner
yes,
goes free.
yes,
You do have to ask the question, what was done
yes,
what was
and
that a reward
and
for?
we don't see that yet. And then I also know, though, that there is a quite distinct sort of group of Belarusian civil society experts who are negotiating, who were sort of advocating on the Hill for a long time, asking for some sort of communications with the regime to release prisoners. So I would say I would not expect that this was the decisive factor, because I think like there should be some greater American interest at stake. But however, I think like all of these factors put together, they still made some difference. And here comes the cufflinks.
But you don't
Yeah.
think it was just the cufflinks that that like
I
that he was
think
so charmed by the
Those are
cufflinks
pretty.
that he like you think there was probably something else done.
Those are pretty generic gift shop
um
cufflinks.
Lukashenko selling himself, like being a useful back channel for the Alaska summit, or some back channel communication between Moscow and Washington. I think that's where we should look at. And I think the humanitarian track is just a nice gift to the liberals for them to say, like, okay, dude, like, if that was just a strict, pragmatic cooperation, like lifting sanctions and stuff like that, I think that would have too much public outcry. So I think that's my pragmatic explanation.
Yeah, I will also say I very much hope that the cufflinks are bugged. I think anytime you give a shiny object to Lukashenko, it should certainly have listening devices in it.
I think
But
I mean I think it's standard for any country to screen a gift like that. So I don't know that that works anymore.
I don't know. I think that's exactly the kind of misdirection we would expect from a CIA officer, Holly. And I also think that Holly is personally the person who installs the listening devices in
Yeah,
cufflinks. She
for sure. You had to
pretends to
come
be
all the way over here
crafting,
to set up
but
my
that's the
microphone.
craft that she's engaged in.
I'm a highly technical operative. That's why I couldn't figure out how to plug in this microphone and use it properly when you gave it to me. So,
So,
Belarus.
Carol H asks an important question, which is whether we should assume our guest is based in the United States. Our guest is indeed based in Washington, D.C., where she has a pending asylum case, for reasons of which she is more careful than I am about talking about anything related to domestic U.S. politics, which she should not comment on, even
Absolutely.
when I'm making jokes about uh, um, uh, uh, pictures of naked ladies and that sort of thing given as birthday gifts. Um, uh,
This is a good place for me to jump in and say that I interviewed Katerina earlier this year, and if about her, basically we just walked through her whole life story, and it's very interesting and inspiring, and that's on my Substack.
and you should share that in the chat. And,
I
and
did.
oh well, I can't display it on the screen
Oh
right
well, I'll
now, so
share it
do it
again,
again.
although I've lost
Um,
it.
and Katya also wrote a lengthy article in Lawfare about her story as a insurrectionist in Ukraine, uh, sorry, in Belarus, and after, and how she has been on trial and is now a convicted insurrectionist, by the way. And she is the only person who has ever said to me the great line, I will be insulted if I get less than 10 years. And so as not to insult her, the court in fact gave her 10 years, which the prison sentence of which she is, as we speak, evading by hanging out.
serving in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, serving in Washington, D.C. So this is, Katya is not the only convicted felon we have on the show. but she is certainly the only one that we have on the show regularly these days.
Who are the others?
Oh, I have a friend who does work on prison libraries, who had was a uh, it was incarcerated for a number of years and then went to Yale Law School. Now does poetry editing for the New York Times.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been on the show a number of
Wow.
times,
Live
and
and win.
I think his project is amazing. So but the difference is that Katya is innocent of
Correct.
all proper crimes as any civilized society would define them. Whereas, and I think so, but nonetheless is our star insurrectionist on the show. And by the way, I would have other insurrectionists on the show. They just don't seem to want to come on the show, and I'm not going to chase them, you know. Um,
Well, I don't know about insurrectionists because we are strictly nonviolent, of course. But
but
I
I
could
would talk to violent people.
I know, but I'm just talking. Let me finish my sentence. But I could see the show having in the future being just chock full of of politically prosecuted people.
Yeah, I could be one myself relatively
I was
soon.
thinking.
And I'm not gonna stop doing the show. It'll
Correct.
be, a live stream from the
Hey,
Birmingham jail.
maybe we can
Um,
get Jimmy Kimmel on here now.
yeah, exactly. Um, anyway,
Katya, do not comment on any of this.
no, she's just gonna sit there with a beatific smile,
Yeah, he's
and
good at
that
that.
faint Mona Lisa, like, so we all kind of wonder what she's thinking. Um, so, folks, we have 9 minutes left. We did not get to 40 today. We barely got to 30, which is not unsurprising, which is not surprising given the world's just insistent lack of interest in Belarus, which is dumb. And I want to explain why it's dumb. Or I really want Katya to explain why it's dumb. Why should the world care about Belarus?
Oh God. I would say like in one way though, like it could be good that no one is or like less attention sometimes could be good. However, as the in the past couple years, Belarus has been on the news and like in the very random instances, or when we're still part of the like we're co-aggressor in the Russia's war against Ukraine, and we are staging ground for Russian operations, like sort of trying to provoke, or I think we will try to provoke NATO at some point. Let's put it that way. So this is someone like this interesting place in between where no one allegedly cares about except for Belarusians themselves, and and Russians who have excessive geopolitical appetites, and that's how we've been used. And things could get worse. I don't know. Oh my god, that sounds too dramatic.
I can do better. You should care about Belarus because it is the vehicle through which Russia gets into other countries in Europe. If you just look at a map and you imagine that Ukraine remains independent, which I think is overwhelmingly likely, there really isn't, and you imagine that Finland is strong, which it is, there's no path to menacing Europe except by air that doesn't run through Belarus. You can draw little ways like the Kaliningrad thing, but the Russian army isn't in Kaliningrad in any numbers. If you want to imagine a Russo Polish confrontation at any scale, it goes through Belarus. If you want to imagine a Russo German confrontation, it goes through Belarus. What is I mean, yeah, you can do Baltic stuff, without Belarus. You can't do much else. And that's why, for people who don't care about Belarusian democracy or Belarusian human rights or Belarusian anything else, for its own terms, you got to care about Belarus anyway, because it's the buffer, it's the space in between. And it's what, and that is why um, uh, it's objectively important. And we pretend that it's not because Lukashenko is, between brutalities, a clown. But that's a mistake. Um, and so that's, that's my thought on the subject. Holly, do you have any big questions for Katya before we close?
I don't know if you want to do this on the show, but I'm just wondering how you're doing personally, and just what you've been up to
I
more
have an answer
generally.
to that. So I am writing neurotically long reads on lawfare, and one like the recent one was on Washington and Minsk relations, which I would recommend to check it out. It's still relevant. And
Share it in the
writing for
chat.
yes, and writing for a bunch of other places in Europe and some American think tanks, and working on my PhD, and trying to wrap my head around those pragmatic academics who would say that exactly places like Belarus and Ukraine are just like some write-off, like some expense that could be overlooked because there are great powers at play.
It's a new semester. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. It's going to be a great freaking few months. Uh, and we are going to be back tomorrow. Do I know who the hosts are going to be? No. Do I know who the guests are going to be?
I'm not on tomorrow
No.
because
Holly's.
this is a public service announcement, friends, women friends. Tomorrow I'm getting my mammogram. And when was your last mammogram? Women over a certain age, which does not include our guest today. But some of the rest of you are over a certain age. I know you are. And is it time? Go get smashed. Go get smashed.
Well, I'm going to leave that right where it is. Listen to Holly. Tomorrow is a big day for Lawfare. It is our 15th anniversary. Lawfare is not quite at the age yet where it needs a mammogram, but hopefully we will get there. And I don't know how you actually give a mammogram to a web publication.
I think the Trump administration is giving a mammogram to many publications.
Yeah, exactly. But we are transparent, so maybe we don't need one because our transparency is so extreme. We're going to be back tomorrow before Lawfare's 15th anniversary party, before, well, maybe during Holly's mammogram. We will not be covering that live. And it's going to be and this fine lady will have to cover for all the cactuses. But look, you'll be there and I'll be there. And I don't know, maybe Katya will come back and be a co-host tomorrow. Who knows? And it'll be fun.